Good evening, everybody. David Paul, KHOU 11 Chief Meteorologist based out of Houston, Texas, with you on this Thursday evening for your Atlantic tropical update. The Northeast has been just slammed, not only by Ida with record-breaking rainfall and the terrible flooding that's taken place across New Jersey, New York, and the Northeast United States. You guys have been hit by 3 systems in a period of about 2 weeks, from August 18th to September 1st. The Northeast has been impacted by Fred, the remnants of what was Fred. That one came up on a very similar track to what Ida eventually came up. Henri, hurricane, made landfall August the 22nd, and then Ida, of course, September the 1st, yesterday, and that track right over New York City. So not only did this produce very heavy rain, it was producing it on ground that's been well saturated by 2 other decaying tropical systems, and that storm track right through New Jersey and right through New York and Manhattan and Long Island just could not be more, let's just say, imperfect to put heavy rain on a major metropolitan area with so much concrete, and that water just had absolutely nowhere to go, and certainly the ground couldn't soak it in. I thought this was interesting. So these are Ida's rain totals, and some of these are preliminary, from Louisiana as it made landfall near New Orleans several days ago. Laplace, 13 inches of rain. New Orleans had 7 inches of rain. Slidell, 5.3 inches of rain. So that's as the Cat 4 hurricane made landfall. Compare that to the rain totals several days later in New York, New Jersey. Flemington, 11 inches of rain. Philadelphia, 9 inches of rain. New York, 7 inches of rain, although there are some spots in New York that had 10, 11 inches of rain. It depends on exactly what rain gauge you're looking at. So very similar to the Cat 4 rain totals that you got from the remnants of what was at one point Hurricane Ida. So September 1st, New York, one of the 5 top wettest days in New York City history. At one point, New York recorded 3.15 inches of rain in a period of 1 hour between 8:51 p.m. and 9:51 p.m. That'll be the wettest hour ever recorded for New York City. And over 20 daily rainfall records were shattered from Virginia into Massachusetts as the storm moved on through. And you look at these rain totals, and remember, this was falling on top of saturated ground. So the rain, not only in a metropolitan area where the concrete just doesn't absorb it, but what grassy spaces there were, in most cases, were just not in a position to be able to hold the precipitation hitting the ground. It is nothing to help. And one of the biggest factors in creating this much rainfall in such a short period of time, 3 inches of rain or plus in 1 hour, for example, that rainfall rate, you've got to have the tropical moisture in place, which we did. The vertical atmosphere was completely saturated, near record amounts of moisture in the vertical atmosphere. But at the top of the atmosphere, we also had a jet streak, and this really helped to enhance the rainfall rates and total. So jet streak. So this is what the upper level wind pattern looked like at 34,000 feet as we began Wednesday late afternoon, Wednesday evening at the onset of this event. And we had this jet streak. So what is that? It's an area of very fast moving wind, accelerating winds within the flow, the general flow of the jet stream, which was dipping down through portions of Ohio, came out through Pennsylvania, then accelerated. You got winds in here at 34,000 feet up above 100 miles an hour. So why is that important? Well, we look at these jet streaks and we look at the structure. Now remember, you've got the air flowing from west to east. So the air is flowing this way. So we've got a west to east orientation. And what we look for is where is the right rear quadrant of this jet streak. And again, to motion, this is the right rear quadrant. And you can see where it's boxed in right over New York, New Jersey, where the heavy rain occurred. So this right rear quadrant in these jet streaks quite often will create the most lift, and you'll get the heaviest rain in the right rear quadrant. How? Well, here's what happens. As the air enters that right rear quadrant, again, these are the winds blowing up at 34,000 feet, way at the top of the atmosphere. They come in relatively slow, and then these brighter colors represent much faster wind speeds, so they come in slow and then accelerate through the right rear quadrant. They come in slow, they exit moving much faster. And what that does is that acceleration creates space in between those air molecules, just a little bit, but enough space as it accelerates to create a vacuum. And you've got a vacuum up at 34,000 feet. That enhances the convection up through the vertical column, and that is what wrings out all of the available moisture from the surface all the way up to the top of the atmosphere. When you've got the ability to do that, you can get these tremendous rainfall rates and rainfall totals, and that's one of the big reasons why, one of the many factors that resulted in such a devastating rainfall event. Where is it now? Exiting up into Halifax. By Friday, it's done. And then our eyes turn to what's going on in the open Atlantic. And this is Larry. This is Larry by next Monday. Probably a Cat 4 hurricane by that point. Here's Larry tonight. Infrared satellite. It's an 80-mile-an-hour hurricane. Winds at 80, moving west at 18, moving along at a pretty good clip. Pressure's dropped down to 985 millibars. And you can see it's got a good counterclockwise rotation to it. Looks like this little part here is going to become the core of what eventually becomes a very tightly wound, powerful major hurricane. Looking at water vapor gives us a better view at what's going on at the top of the atmosphere. Very important what's going on up there. And if you just look at this, you can see at the top, notice how it's spinning in the opposite direction. There's a high pressure area way up at the top. That's good if you want a hurricane to grow and accelerate fast, because what it results in is outflow. You've got outflow at almost every quadrant above Larry. Only on the far eastern side do we have some southeasterly shear, a little bit of shear coming in. That's really the only limiting factor right now, is just a little southeasterly shear. But you've got good ventilation at most quadrants. Again, these tropical systems are like engines. The fuel is the warm water of the Atlantic Ocean. It comes in, it runs through the engine, the developing hurricane, and then it's got to go somewhere. It's got to go out the top. That's the venting. You've got to have good exhaust to get a hurricane to crank up, and that's what we're going to have. And again, this is the upper level wind flow. Here's the storm Cat 1 Larry right now. And you can see in general, look at the broad clockwise rotation around Larry. Again, this is way up at the top of the atmosphere. Isn't it interesting? You've got to have winds blowing clockwise above an intense counterclockwise rotation to really get a hurricane to go. And that's what we've got, and that's what we will continue to have. Now, this may continue to have a little bit of southeasterly shear, but it will be moving along with that shear, so its impact will be minimal. This is going into Sunday. And you can see in general, we've still got that broad area of high pressure way up top, 34,000 feet, sitting right on top of an intense counterclockwise rotation, which at this time going into Tuesday will be Cat 4 Larry. Let's see, Bermuda is here. At the moment, models have it missing Bermuda, but we're watching it carefully just in case it gets a little bit closer. We had a couple of Bermuda hits the past couple of years. Hopefully you will not have to deal with Larry. Forecast track from the Hurricane Center. Again, winds go to 120 Saturday, 140 by Sunday afternoon, maybe back down to Cat 3, 125 by Tuesday. There's Bermuda. This one will stay well off the eastern seaboard. Bermuda is the only threat in our area of the Atlantic Ocean. So that's Larry. Behind Larry, there's a tropical wave, and in fact, the Hurricane Center does have a 30% chance that this little spot can spin up and form a tropical depression. But as of this evening, it certainly doesn't look very healthy. I don't see any deep convection. We'll keep an eye on that. And you can see behind that, yet another wave is about to come off the west coast of Africa. At the moment, Hurricane Center doesn't have any type of probability for development on this one. And the models, by the way, don't seem to want to develop either one of these systems. So for the moment, it's Larry, the only real game in town in the Atlantic Basin. There's that spot that's just come off the west coast of Africa, 30% chance for development next 2 days and next 5 days. Nothing on this next wave at the moment. And then over in the Western Caribbean, we've got this little spot that just kind of doesn't want to go away. There's a little vort in here. It's interacting with land, so the Hurricane Center's lowered its chance for development over the next 2 days to just 10%. 20% low chance for development over the next 5 days. But, you know, you've got a slug of tropical moisture. You've got very warm sea surface temperatures. It's September. Anything can happen. Oh, by the way, the next name on the list is Mindy. And so we'll be watching this little vort as it moves along. And, you know, it may meander into the southern Gulf of Mexico. what it will do is carry with it a slug of tropical moisture. That's the slug getting into the southern Gulf going into Sunday. And then going into Monday, Tuesday of next week, the 7th of September, there's a chunk of tropical moisture out here. You put any type of thunderstorm activity out here, warm sea surface temperatures, it's September, you can get something spinning up under those conditions. But you notice this, you see what I see, right? That is a cold front. It's not going to get cold, but it is September. We're changing seasons. Again, we're in meteorological fall now, and that front is forecast to kind of droop down and kind of hang out on the Gulf Coast. What usually happens if we were to get a developing system with a front like that, high pressure back up behind that front, whatever forms out here, if something were to form here, would be pushed into Mexico, maybe deep South Texas, or turn to the east-northeast. So Florida, the Panhandle, the northeast Gulf of Mexico could be impacted by whatever if something is able to form in that slug of tropical moisture. It's just something that we will be keeping an eye on. This time of the year, September, you just can't keep your eye or take your eye off of any of these systems out there, no matter how small or insignificant they seem. Questions, comments, hit me up on social. We'll have another update on Friday. We'll see you then.